Kia ora and welcome to episode 3 of Canterbury Cricket's Team Talk webinar series. So far, we've covered off a couple of topics. We had John Quinn and Todd Astle in week 1 talking us through how to manage pressure and stress, and that was pretty topical with the uncertainty and the stressful times we've all been through, and it was really interesting to get their perspective on just a couple of little things we can all add into our normal life as well as some stuff that can help us on the sporting field too. And from there, we progressed into leadership. We had another couple of wonderful guests too, in Amy Satterthwaite and Cole McConkey, and they again took us through their experiences on the field, off the field with the leadership staff, the differences between captaincy and leadership, and then also just again, a few wee things that we can start to bring into our own lives, that self-leadership piece, and then really what does make a good leader in a sports side. So far, it has been an interesting couple of weeks, and I'm sure that this week will be no different whatsoever. Another couple of quality guests lined up in Leah Tahuhu and Matt Henry, and they are going to talk us through their World Cup experience. But before we delve right into that, just a little bit of a housekeeping piece for those that haven't joined us before. We do ask you to stay muted throughout this call, keep your microphone on mute. Should mean that we can keep that background noise to an absolute minimum, make it easy to hear what our guests have to say. How this webinar will work is myself, Leah, Matt, we'll have a general chat. I'll fire some questions at them, put them in the hot seat a little bit with that, and then once we come to the end of that, you have the opportunity to ask questions. How we ask you do that is via the chat function. The graphic on your screen at the moment, it's highlighted in orange. So all you need to do is click on that, type your question in, and we will have Aaron from Canterbury Cricket at the other end of that. He'll be monitoring those, and then he will become our question master at the back end of this webinar. This Zoom is recorded as well, so you can have your camera on or off, whichever suits you best. But the really cool thing with this is it does mean that later down the track, you can sit down, you can have a watch and a listen to this webinar as well. At the moment, the previous 2 weeks, they are sitting on Canterbury Cricket's Facebook page under the videos section. So if you want, you can have a wee browse of those in your own time as well. But for now, sit back and relax. My name's Frankie Mackay. I'm going to be your host tonight and throughout this Team Talk series. And as I said, I've got these 2 wonderful guests alongside me in Leah Tahuhu and Matt Henry. And look, if I wanted to, I could talk probably all night about the stuff that they have achieved on the cricket field. They've got illustrious careers behind them, and I'm sure still to come as well. But you're not all as stats-minded as me, and I'm sure these 2 would be embarrassed if I just spent hours rattling off everything they've done in cricket. But the guest tonight, Leah Tahuhu, made her Magician's debut back in 2008, and shortly after that made her White Ferns debut in 2011. From there, she's become an integral member of both sides and has racked up 123 games across both formats for New Zealand. She's the fastest bowler comfortably in New Zealand and can probably lay claim to being the fastest in the world. And that's been one of the things that has made her such a valuable member of multiple teams worldwide. She's been playing in the Women's Big Bash in Australia since 2016, played in the English T20 competition, the Kia Super League, for 2 seasons, has been part of the Indian Challenger Series, which hopefully is a precursor to a women's IPL. And on top of this, has played in 5 ICC Cricket World Cups and 3 Indoor Cricket World Cups. So plenty of experience there, and pretty obvious why we've got her along tonight to chat all things World Cup experience. Alongside her, we've got Matt Henry, obviously no stranger to World Cups either. He's got a couple of World Cup campaigns to his name so far. Matt made his Canterbury debut, first-class debut, back in 2011 as a substitute player, and promptly took 5 for 23 in his 9 overs and completely turned that match on its head. It became a bit of an interesting trend for debuts as well. In his 50-over Canterbury debut, took 4 for. In his Test debut, took 4 wickets in the first innings and 2 in the second. And then in his one-day international debut, took a 4 for as well. So that's obviously been a nice wee trend for Matt, and one-day cricket really has been the area which he's excelled. He's got 92 wickets to his name in just the 52 matches. He's been a part of 2 World Cup final sides and has played county cricket for Worcester, Derbyshire, and most recently Kent, as well as playing in the IPL. A big thanks to you 2 for joining me here tonight. Fantastic to have you as always. But really, it's been an interesting time. It's been mixed, but what have you guys been up to? Matt, It's been an interesting time. I think you are planning on heading back over to Kent. So what does the winter look like now for you, and what have you been up to so far?
Yeah, obviously was planning over to go to Kent for a stint to start over their home summer, but that was cut short. But it's been a bit of a, I suppose, a bit of a blessing to spend some time at home. It's a bit of a rarity at the moment. So yeah, really enjoyed this time at home, and the lockdown just spent really plenty of walks and plenty of time to do a bit of cooking, and I'm doing a bit of study as well, just to fill the time. And so it's been really nice actually.
Sounds lovely. And Leah, been a bit of a different winter for you as well. Some winter tours cancelled for New Zealand, and a new addition to the family too, becoming a parent for the first time. How's that been?
Yeah, it's been great. Like you say, it's been completely different, and I don't think anything prepares you for becoming a parent. But like you say, we had a tour cancelled in April. We were supposed to be in Sri Lanka, and to be honest, it's been quite nice to have the whole time at home, sort of similar to Matt, obviously. It's few and far between now, so to sort of have a consistent sort of, we're looking at 6 months at home. It's been really nice to set up a new house and just to have some time with the family.
And so we're talking World Cup cricket tonight. We'll start off. Is this the pinnacle event? Matt, is there a bigger event or events in the world game, or is World Cup cricket where it's at?
Oh, look, it's pretty special to play a World Cup. I mean, yeah, if obviously haven't yet lifted one, but obviously getting pretty close a couple of times, and it's one of those times where I suppose the whole nation kind of rallies around you, and it's that every 4 years it makes it pretty special, and knockout cricket, and there's obviously so much on the line. It's pretty exciting cricket to play and be part of.
And Leah, you've been involved with a few World Cups, both one day and T20. If you got to choose one, you get to be the winner of one of those, which one are you picking?
Definitely one day cricket. I think that's still the pinnacle for everyone. Don't get me wrong, T20 is fantastic, and I think it's brought a whole lot of fans into the game that we probably wouldn't have seen, but one day cricket is still definitely the one that I'd love to lift.
And then for women as well, the Com Games, women's cricket's recently been announced as coming up in the next one. Where does that sit in the scheme of things? Does that sit equal to a T20 World Cup, or is it still slightly different?
It's a hard one to answer, to be fair, because it's something that you never really thought would be a possibility. And then to find out sort of last year that, T20 cricket's being included in the Commonwealth Games, it's a huge carrot that's sort of dangling there. So I think it probably sits equal to a T20 World Cup. It'll be an exciting time to hopefully be involved in that.
Yeah, absolutely. First time round is always something special. And I guess for you, Matt, do you sit down and do you look at the men's T20 World Cup that's scheduled for October at the moment, but with the possibility that pushes back to February, March, and maybe think, yeah, I could have a good crack at that team?
Yeah, obviously, with it being looking like it's going to be postponed, it obviously opens up a window for especially our domestic comp. It's going to be a really strong competition. Everyone's going to be home, which has been a long time, probably since all the BLACKCAPs are available to play. So I think it's quite cool to look forward to a domestic season where you're playing against consistently the country's best, and then leading into a World Cup year as well. I mean, T20 is a massive form game, so there's going to be plenty of opportunities to put your hand up in that.
Yeah, it is definitely an exciting time, and potentially it does suit New Zealand side. If that does get pushed back a little, makes it a little bit easier. But for you, what's the difference between a World Cup and just a normal tour? What are the main differences you can point out?
Well, there's quite a lot on the line. You only have a World Cup every 4 years, so when it comes to that time, it usually is a goal over a long period as well. It's usually that kind of carrot you're working towards for a long period of time, and then when you get that opportunity to obviously go out there and to be a part of that World Cup and to try to create history is quite unique. Growing up, you're obviously watching World Cups, and it's usually those times where it's probably at somewhere else in the world and you can stay up a little bit later or whatever it is as a kid. So you always kind of dream when you're in the backyard, you're kind of running in pretending it's a World Cup final, and then I suppose for a player to actually get to that position where you have that opportunity, it's pretty it's pretty exciting. And I think you definitely look back on the last two World Cups that we've been a part of have been some pretty nail-biting games, and created a bit of history there as well.
And World Cups, they generally tend to be a slightly longer affair than just a general tour. Leah, what do you do? What do the White Ferns do? What do you do to kind of pass the time between games? How do you manage the travel? At times, especially World Cups in England, a lot of it's done by bus. What do you do? What do you do off field?
There's normally a lot of music being played. Generally, Susie Bates is singing on those long coach rides in England. So that can go one way or the other sometimes. You put the headphones in pretty quickly, or you're a bit up for having a laugh at Susie. There's a lot of cards that are generally played and that sort of thing. You sort of set up a team room and have a bit of movie nights and sort of bits and pieces, and make sure that you sort of stay connected with the team in between those games. Like you say, they can be quite a prolonged experience, so it's important to make sure that you're still connected as a team.
And are you guys the same, Matt? Have you got a Susie Bates in your team that's always keen to get on the mic or is always causing mischief in between games?
Yeah, Baldy's pretty quick to get in charge. He usually carries a speaker around himself, so I don't think anyone really has an opportunity to jump on that. But no, to be fair, give him credit, he's not that bad on it.
And your first game, Matt, your first World Cup game was a World Cup semi-final, so thrown straight into that pressure cooker environment against South Africa at Eden Park. What are your memories of that day? Because I was there in the stands, and that's probably one of my most favourite experiences that I've had as a cricket fan. So what was it like being out in the middle for that and being out in the middle in your first World Cup game?
Yeah, obviously having a World Cup at home, a little bit like yourself, Frankie, especially for the first part of it, was actually just being a fan and enjoying the cricket that they were playing. It was pretty cool because I think cricket, obviously, it's a pretty rugby-driven country, and I suppose for cricket to be in the limelight like it was, and it literally gripped the whole entire nation. So it was quite cool to be a bit of a fan, watch all the cricket, and I went up to one of the games, the Eden Park Australia versus New Zealand pool match, which was an absolute nail biter itself as well. And I just remember the crowd and just how loud it was, and I suppose the atmosphere. So in hindsight, it was actually it was pretty cool to actually have that experience before going into that semi-final. Otherwise, I think it probably would have been pretty overwhelming going out there, and obviously that roar and it felt like the ground was shaking. It was pretty surreal. And yeah, like I was at my cousin's engagement party and with a missed call from Hess. So I picked that up pretty quick after I realised it was him. And then I was on the flight in the morning, and yeah, it all happened rather quickly. I don't think I was anticipating that to play in the actual game. So to get the nod and Baz to say you're going to play in a World Cup semi-final was pretty exciting, to be honest. And it was pretty, obviously, it was an incredible game itself. But just the experience, like you said, I don't think I've ever been a part of a New Zealand crowd that's been so vocal and living every single moment. It was dead quiet when the ball was running in, and they were clapping singles towards the end there. So it was pretty cool.
Definitely a special game. And I guess as well, it got so close, as you know, and obviously Grant Elliott winning the game right at the end there. But you would have been pretty close to being next in. You're probably sitting there with your pads on. What were you feeling? What does that feel like?
Yeah, no, that was definitely, had the pads on. I was kind of, when it kind of got to that point, we lost a couple of wickets, and I was like, well, this is actually going to happen. might end up having a wee hander here. So yeah, I was putting the pads on, and Baz was in there, and he was obviously pretty confident and backing the guys to get across the line. So that was pretty reassuring. And then I think it was Tim would have been in next. So I was sitting in the dugout, and he was there, and obviously Dan played a pretty crucial hand out there. And when he got to that little four, that was a bit of a relief. And then as soon as Grant got on strike, it was like, come on.
And Leah, look, you've had a lot of World Cup experiences, some good, some not so good, unfortunately. The White Ferns, look, they have had a really, on paper, great side, outstanding side at some points. Is there something you can pinpoint why that group of players hasn't lifted the cup yet? And is it something that as a group actually gets spoken about at all?
Put me on the spot here, Frank.
I know, I'm really sorry.
No, look, it is something that we've talked about as a group, and obviously you have those disappointing moments, when you're not making it out of the group stages like we have recently. And I think if we're brutally honest, senior players, we're not stepping up enough in those big tournaments and sort of taking a lot of the pressure and doing a lot of the work. And I think that's something that we'll be looking to address heading into next year's World Cup. And the sort of the groundwork is well and truly underway, and it's started, and the girls are working really hard. And look, maybe it's just that sort of top 1% of the head, making sure that we get that in the right place right before the tournament, so that we can put in a good showing.
And have you got a favourite across all the World Cups you've been to? Is there one that stands out as a favourite World Cup?
Probably my first one was in India in 2013, and that is also the first time I'd ever been to India. So that in itself was a certain culture shock. Sort of hits you like a ton of bricks when you get off the plane. And just, I suppose, being able to be a part of a World Cup for the first time, and having it in a country like India where they embrace cricket so much, and every hotel you turned up to was another sort of massive greeting, and all of that sort of stuff. It sort of blew you away, and you had to almost get away from it a little bit and hide in your room and sort of just remember that you're there to play cricket and not get too wrapped up in everything that goes around a World Cup. Yeah,
it can be a pretty intense place, and always a good place to get some crowds as well. But another place that's really run with the idea of women's cricket is Australia. The recently completed T20 World Cup, which I guess we were lucky to actually end up getting completed before everything was shut down. But the crowds throughout that, and then to try and push for a 90,000 plus crowd, and to end up with 85,000 odd, is such an impressive amount of people to get to any game, let alone a women's game. How big is that for women's cricket?
Yeah, I think it's massive. Like you say, I think there was 86,500 or something ridiculous like that streaming into the MCG. And I think if you'd said that, 2 or 5 years ago, that would be happening for a women's cricket game, people would have laughed in your face. But the work that I think Cricket Australia has put in to the women's side, and to be able to, I suppose, draw a crowd like that from a team that have really embraced sort of what they need to do to engage the public. I think they've recently been voted the most popular women's team in Australia, or the most followed, or something along those lines. And I think it shows that if you put the product out there, the people will come. And sometimes, that's something that I think a lot of other countries are starting to embrace with the women's game as well.
And Matt, you've played in 2 World Cups. You've had the opportunity to play one at home and then play one abroad. Did that home World Cup, was that a big difference in it, to have that home support, to know your surroundings, to not have to do as much travel? Does that make a big difference?
Yeah, I suppose I'm speaking on behalf of the other guys, really, because I was kind of just sitting there with my Tui shirt on in the crowd. Yeah, like, I think obviously I only had about 4 or 5 days in camp before, including the semi-final in New Zealand when it happened. I think it's more just the excitement level of being at home and having that, the support. It was huge. Like, I mean, the hotel was busy. Going in a bus, going to the ground, and there's people everywhere. Like, it's pretty foreign to have that in your own country. So yeah, it was pretty special, and I suppose just to be a part of it. I mean, I suppose looking back then, there was that bit of a mantra. It was the time of our lives, and it literally was like we were living our dream, really. Like a World Cup at home. It doesn't get too much better than that. So it was just cool to have, obviously, the whole, like, your family and all that were present, and yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, there's a lot of positives to it, but there can be that pressure side to it too. You kind of do have hopes of the nation. Was that mantra, that team mantra that you had, was that the only kind of tool you had to deal with that, or were there other kind of strategies you had in place?
Yeah, well, it was quite amazing. I suppose leading up to the World Cup, I was quite heavily involved in playing quite a few games there. And I mean, even just before, I think we had like 7 one-dayers against Sri Lanka, which is a massive series. And I suppose you're involved in that, then you leave the team. You've watched them play some incredible cricket throughout. I think I was wondering what the environment would be like, and it was exactly the same. It was just a really relaxed camp. everyone was enjoying their cricket, and I think everyone was just kind of embracing it, which is quite unique in itself. I mean, I suppose you look at a World Cup at home and there are a lot of pressures and those things associated with it, but the guys seem to block out that noise relatively well. Definitely showed it. But yeah, definitely coming in as a semi-final was, I think that's probably the strength of the character of the team, the consistent, I suppose, environment. It was quite remarkable, really. And
then possibly that final 2015 played in Australia at the MCG. Possibly, is that a little disadvantage that you'd played all your cricket in New Zealand, then for the biggest game of the trip, had to go over and actually play in the cauldron that is the MCG?
Yeah, it's hard to say it's a disadvantage. I mean, obviously, always playing cricket in Australia, like most times, it's tough cricket. And I think regardless of if it was a World Cup final, it's going to be tough cricket with pressured moments. And I think that's when you look back in World Cup history, there's always little moments that you're remembered for. And I think like going over there, we'd gone over, I think it was a year beforehand, we all went over as a squad, went to the MCG, had a wee look around and kind of really got the team together before that. So I suppose it was always a goal to kind of get there. But like you said, to walk into a packed MCG, the buzz, it's pretty incredible, really. So yeah, disadvantage. Yeah, I mean, you're playing Australia at home, which is always going to be a tough ask. But we're definitely up for the challenge. Obviously, the result didn't go away. They obviously were an incredible outfit and really showed that on the day as well. I mean, Aussies know how to play World Cup cricket.
And that McCullum dismissal early doors, it's been talked about to death. But I guess from actually inside the dressing room, you're sitting there watching, does that actually have a big effect? I think people, armchair critics, everyone can throw it out there that that's the winning and losing of it. But he'd really set the tone throughout. Did it actually have a bit of a blow at the start of that game?
From a bowling point of view, that was the best thing, watching Baz just go out there and destroy bowling attacks, and you're like, wow, thank God I'm not bowling to him. Yeah, like it's obviously when you're watching it, it's more excitement. You're like, wow, what's going to happen today? And he was just on such great form, and he was just playing some incredible cricket. But I don't think that it had the massive, not like a domino effect or anything, because we actually came back all right, and we're in a good position. I feel like the spell, I think it was Faulkner that he would have got 2 wickets in an over, maybe even 3. Yeah, well, he had a remarkable spell of bowling, and that really stemmed it, because I remember Grant obviously built that really strong partnership up, and we actually rebuilt nicely. But there's no two-way saying when Brendan got us off to a flyer, I mean, you just put the team on the back foot straight away, and you're hitting their best bowls out of their attack so early. It definitely is. It was a strength of his, yeah.
And Leah, you're sitting here listening to Matt talk about home World Cup, the groundswell of support from the New Zealand public, how good it was. There's the chance that you could be playing in a home World Cup start of next year. What does that feel like? Are you hoping for the same kind of thing to happen for the team to get around for the country to get around the White Ferns?
Yeah, I'm loving sitting here listening to what Matt's saying. It's giving me goosebumps and sort of getting me really excited for sort of, like you say, come February next year and a home World Cup, and definitely hoping that we can get the same sort of buy-in from the public and sort of really get the nation behind us, and play the same sort of attacking brand of cricket that sort of got that support, and hopefully take it to these other countries.
And I mean, ideally, it's a World Cup win as well. 2000, there's the history there when we host World Cups that it goes very well for New Zealand sides. But does it feel like this is the real chance, potentially regardless of winning the cup or not, that this is going to be a real career highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's once in a career opportunity, and not everyone gets the opportunity to play in a home World Cup. So it definitely will be a highlight, having sort of the family there and sort of friends around. It'll be a really cool experience that a lot of the girls can't wait for.
And I guess, to me, the only downside I could possibly see of a home World Cup is no business class travel. For us plebs that never get to experience that, how much of a difference does that make? You're heading overseas, you're not having to be back in coach, you're up in the front half of the plane. Is it that much of a difference? And what's it like up there?
Look, I think it just allows you to arrive fresh. you can actually get some sleep, which is always quite nice on those long flights. You know, it can take a long time to get to the West Indies, I can tell you that much. So if you are sitting at the front of the plane, luckily enough, you can arrive somewhat fresh. And, you know, we've often travelled over and had to play a game sort of 3 or 4 days after getting off the plane. So I would say from a body point of view, it definitely does make a bit of a difference.
That's what I like to hear. One day maybe I'll get the chance to sneak up there. But Matt, that 2015 World Cup obviously didn't go as planned. What kind of, do you take lessons out of that? Did that really kind of give you some thoughts heading into 2019? Does that kind of push the team in a certain direction of what they need to do?
Yeah, I think, like, obviously having that World Cup experience, going to a final and just, I suppose, embracing it for what it is and enjoying it. And obviously 2015 not going the way we obviously wanted it to go, but there was a real sense of going into 2019 that, right, we've been there before, and like it wasn't a fluke. Let's get there again and let's lift this trophy. And there was a real, I suppose, underlying confidence that we can get there and we can do it. I suppose that it was a really, like, it wasn't going into 2019, wasn't like, oh wow, we've made the World Cup final. It was like, right, we've won this game, right, let's move on to the next, we've got another one to go, you know what I mean? And yeah, so I think having that World Cup experience definitely, it gives you that sense of confidence, going, right, well, I've been here before, let's try to take it one step further. But it wasn't meant to be.
Unfortunately not. And I will ask you a few questions about that now, as painful as it may be as well. Obviously that semi-final 2019 played across 2 days, so that's a little bit interesting anyway. And then you win that one, head onto Lords. Was there a moment in that game where you thought, yes, we've got it, or maybe actually, maybe the cricket gods are conspiring against us here?
Well, I mean, I still haven't gone back and watched the game, but you definitely, like, there was so many twists and turns. Like, I mean, there was just so many little moments that we're like, wow, we're in this, and there was times we're like, wow, they're in this, and it just kept chopping and changing. And yeah, there's definitely a moment where you're sitting there, you're like, wow, like yeah, this is. It was pretty remarkable. And I suppose you try, in those moments, you're trying to stay present and you're trying to just keep focused at the job at hand. But yeah, there's obviously those moments when you're walking down the final leg in between the over and you can see everything that's going on, and you're like, well, this is pretty special. And I mean, you never sit there and say, yep, we've got this. It was just sitting there going like, wow, this is really, every single bull's living this.
And then coming down to a super over, as a team, do you have kind of a couple of people who you definitely think are locked in for those positions to perform the roles during that super over? Or is it completely, it could be out of anyone, out of the 11 players on the park, could be anyone who's having to bowl the over or be part of that batting group?
Yeah, I think there's probably an element of both. I think, yeah, there's obviously a couple of your go-to guys. Like I don't think there's any questions that obviously Trent was bowling really well. That final over he bowled was like, it was remarkable. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there was just, and I think that was a bit of a no-brainer for the bowling side of things. And I mean, like, even talking about little plays that you win, like those run-outs, like to do those under pressure. Like, there's so many little moments throughout the game that just showed cricket at its kind of highest level. Under pressure, and so, like, that was a bit of a no-brainer. And then going into the batting as well, we've just got so much power in that batting attack, and whoever went out there, you're just backing them to, you know, anything can happen in one over. And unfortunately it wasn't meant to be our day, but yeah, I think, yeah, there's just, you kind of have that feeling, you know, who's going to go out there.
And what gets said after that game? It's all finished. It's tied up. At the end, you don't get the cup. You sit down as a group. What gets said in that moment?
Yeah, it was quite, obviously, it was pretty emotional, and you walk back, and I don't think we even went to the shed straight away, because a lot of the families came in, and I mean, that was probably looking back at that World Cup, which was some of our best memories, having a lot of our families were there. We had a whole nother bus that was for our family support. And we all shared that moment with them. We're obviously on the field, and yeah, it was just, it was pretty gutting. It's pretty hard to really put in words when you have a World Cup like that. And then obviously England had been playing such good cricket as well, and it just the way it ended was just heartbreaking. But at the same time, we were just immensely proud of, I suppose, the way we went about our business, and we stayed true to how we wanted to play our cricket, and we really scrapped away in those tight moments. Like we had, I don't think there was any really easy games that were ours to be had. We had to work for them and find different ways. We were presented with different challenges every game, and I think when you look back on that World Cup, that's something that we kind of look back where you're pretty proud of what you did, and I suppose how you take a loss like that as well. I mean, we just took it on the chin, and you just take it for what it is, really.
And Leah, how about for the White Ferns? How about for yourself? What's kind of the norm after matches, be it a win, a loss, a close game, like what Matt's talking about? Is there, the mixing and mingling with other teams? Is it serious chat straight afterwards? What's kind of the norm?
I think it's a little bit. It's quite fluid, I would say, to be honest. It sort of depends on the situation. I think. At the end of a World Cup, there's obviously a bit of mingling that'll go on and that sort of stuff. But in between those, just game to game, it's generally there's a bit of a chat had, and sort of the most important thing I think is the recovery's done, because especially in the middle of a World Cup, if you're not recovering properly, you're not going to get back out there, because they're pretty brutal on the bodies, especially bowlers who do all the hard work, obviously. So yeah, there's a bit of a chat, but it's normally the next day that the team will get together, and sort of batters and bowlers will have a bit of a talk about what we're going to do for the next game, and then sort of look forward to the next opponent and sort of get your head around that. And it's not often that you've got more than 2 days between a game, so it's pretty quick turnaround. You can't sort of dwell too much on what's happened in the previous game. You've got to always be looking forward.
And Matt mentioned he hadn't actually watched the game back, which I can understand. Look, I've seen enough highlights of that game, I think, to last me an absolute lifetime. But do you ever do that as a White Ferns group? Do you ever, after, I mean, it could be after a win, but after close loss, do you ever sit down and just watch through the painful stuff that kind of led up to that?
No, I can't say we've ever sat down and watched a whole game back. I don't think that would sit too well with a few, but I think, like Matt said, if you individually want to sit back and watch that whole game, then I think that's sort of, people will do that individually, but I've never sat back and watched a whole game, especially a painful one. I think you live that once. Why on earth would you want to go through it again? So I can completely understand where Matt's coming from there, but I think the key thing is we sort of, with the analyst, whoever's on tour, sort of pull out the important bits to have a look at and what you can do better. But I think it's also important to have a look at what you've done well. The only way that you can repeat that is if you're aware of what you're doing. So that's something that I'm a big believer in. Very
true. And do you find that with more World Cup experience, the more you've played in, the more games you've had, the more close games you've had, is it less nervous that you feel, or is it just a different feeling as it kind of goes along?
I think you just get comfortable with the nerves. You're always nervous. You just find a way to embrace it. The more games that you play in those pressure situations, there's a saying that if you're not nervous, you don't care enough. And I believe in that a little bit. I think everyone just deals with it differently.
And now, I guess you're one of the old girls now, you're experienced in it. Do you find that some of the younger players come to you with some questions about World Cups and how to deal with it, or how to just deal with the pressure that goes around it?
Yeah, I think that's a responsibility as you become one of the older players in the group, and being able to share those experiences so that you can, make those nerves a little bit less for those younger players. And, personally, I like to sit down with the bowlers mostly and have a bit of a chat with them and just check in and make sure, they're going all right throughout the tournament. And, as a young player, when you go into a big tournament, if something goes wrong, it can sort of end up snowballing and then sort of get out of control when you just can't allow that to happen. So, I always sat down with sort of older players. Nicola Brown was someone who, when I first came in, sort of helped me out a lot, took me under her wing a bit. So I like to be able to give back as much as I can to those younger players.
And if you had one piece of advice that you were going to dish out to people going to their first first World Cup, or I guess for some of our younger people, their first tournament, big tournament, what would be that piece of advice?
Oh, I think it's about just enjoying it, embrace the nerves, embrace the expectation, but most of all, just enjoy it, because there's a lot of other people who would love to be in your position, and thankfully you're the person who's been chosen to be there. So live it up. It is the best time of your life.
They are definitely very, very special occasions. But Matt, 2015, 2019, both wonderful, both had the country right in behind you, but didn't quite have that fairy tale happy ending that we're after. Is there one that's harder to deal with than the other?
I think personally the 2019 was quite a tough one to swallow. I think being there for the whole entire tournament, involved in the whole pre as well, and to obviously play such a strong brand throughout, and really some really scrappy games in there as well, and then to fall so close. I mean, yeah, you still think about it now, like just lifting that cup, like what that would be. And I think that was probably, I think that was probably a little bit tougher. I think the 2015 was just an incredible ride to be a part of, really. Like that team, what they achieved to get to that point, and to break those barriers to be into that final, and it was incredible. And I suppose just being so grateful to be there and actually have that opportunity. There was so much excitement around there. And then 2019 was more of a right, like let's get this one done, let's get it over the line. So I think that one was probably tougher. I mean, they're both tough. I mean, they're both World Cup finals. I mean, both pretty heartbreaking. But and even the fashion that it happened, it was obviously, it's probably, I don't think you're going to get a better game of cricket. I think it had literally everything you could have. So I think that one will probably sit with me. Yeah.
And to me, I think the Black Caps of the later years, they to me have been the best performing Black Cap side that I can remember. Obviously pretty special, pretty cool to be part of that. But are there a couple of reasons, a couple of things you could maybe put your finger on as to why this Black Cap side is so successful at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, there's no silver bullet, as you know. There's no magic, that formula that works. But I think something that we do very well is stay quite consistent and really focus at the job at hand, kind of just every game looking to grow. Obviously that's happened over a long period of time now, of each game, like, right, what are you learning, and what can we go to move forward, and having the game of cricket in context for what it is as well. And I think, I mean, being involved with the Brendan and Mike Hesson era, then to move on now with Kane and Steady, we've managed to have that consistent flow right through, and management's been huge on that as well, really putting family first. And yeah, I think that's probably a massive strength, being able to create that environment where you can come in and feel comfortable, and as a player go out there and be clear on what you're trying to achieve and how you want to go about that. It really shows that players can kind of go out there and play their best brand of cricket. And I think it definitely has to have some sort of positive impact. And
with the 2021 World Cup coming up, Leah, home World Cup, is this the chance to really put New Zealand cricket on the map? Is this the chance to really give the push to the women's game in New Zealand that maybe it needs? We've seen it with Australia. They've been so successful that they win all the time. They've brought in their women's big bash. That's well supported. Is a win or a really good performance at this home World Cup actually exactly what the women's game needs here?
Yeah, I think it is. If we can put in a good performance, like you say, and even win the World Cup at home, it will give us a huge momentum to be able to make sure that we keep pushing those boundaries and keep ensuring that, women's cricket is continued to be sort of, I guess, valued and sort of respected for the game that it is. And this gives us an opportunity to sort of put it at the forefront of people's minds, with a home World Cup to get the nation behind us. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, it is definitely pretty exciting. Look, I will let you both jump out of the hot seat. Well, from me anyway. I know Aaron has got some questions that have been sent in from people watching and listening here today, but also when they registered. So, question master Aaron, it's over to you.
Cool. Matt, I'm going to take you straight back to 2019. World Cup final before we get on to some nicer questions.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to get over, those losses of those big games? Do some players take it harder than others, or?
Yeah, I think that talking about that final, it took a long time to kind of get your head around, really. I mean, going back into the change room, and obviously I was saying before, obviously how proud and everything like that, all those emotions that come with a tournament like that. But there's also a part that's kind of like what's just happened, and I think everyone kind of deals with it differently. I remember obviously having a break for a few days after that, and still just waking up every morning like, did that really happen? And then even flying home, I was still sitting there and ran into Kane on the same flight home, and we were kind of just like, wow, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of emotions that go with it, and I think everyone's different, and they deal with these times differently as well. But there's there's a lot of emotions that come with something like that. But dealing with it and moving on is obviously very important, and we had quite a big break after that, so it probably wasn't the worst time to have a break.
Cool. And just speaking about emotion, what was the emotion like after Grant Elliott hit that six? What was the feeling like in the changing sheds after that game?
Yeah, well, that was a pretty positive one. That wasn't it? That was incredible. To sit there and watch a nail-biting game, and then for Grant to go out there and such a pressured moment and hit one of the best bowls in the world for a six over long on / cow. I mean, it was just incredible. The feeling was just, and I think it was probably the crowd as well. Eden Park, it's quite a small ground, and it's almost like everyone was there on it. Like the energy was just unbelievable. So yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights of my career, and it will be there for a long time. I think that even when you watch that game, it still gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, definitely. I've certainly watched that six a few times, to say the least.
Titanic.
How do you guys keep a cool head when you have a huge crowd around you when you go into bat or bowl?
Is that to me?
Both of you. You can start, Matt, if you want. Okay,
so sorry, can you repeat that?
How do you keep a calm head when you go into bowl or bat in front of a large crowd?
I think as a cricketer, you get used to, I suppose, blocking out the crowd. Obviously, you're still nervous and you're aware of it all, but there is a sense of, as soon as you get on the field, you're kind of like, oh well, I kind of know what well, you hope you know what you're doing, but you have that kind of that moment where you feel quite comfortable because it is something that you're used to, and you can, I suppose, drowning out the crowd. You're pretty focused on what you're trying to do, and you don't. Personally, I don't notice it much, especially when I'm bowling. Batting. Yeah, I'm pretty focused on the ball, to be honest. The crowd's the last thing that I'm really thinking of. So, personally, it's I don't notice it too much. It's probably more different when you're actually on the field and you're out on the boundary and you've got more interaction and you're closer to the people that you kind of feel their presence.
Yeah, I'm probably quite similar sort of to what Matt's saying. You sort of, once you get the ball in your hand and you're at the top of your mark, you're able to sort of create a bubble around yourself, and you know that you've got to focus for those six balls, and that's your role, that's your job, that's what you're in the team to do. So you're sort of able to block out the rest of it and just, sounds a bit cliche, but focus on your processes, and sort of once you turn around at the top of the mark, you're fully concentrated on just the ball you want to deliver and the batter at the other end. So that's sort of it from me.
Cool. How different do you find a World Cup game as opposed to another international fixture?
I think the difference is probably just the build up around it. There's generally a bit more media that you have to do before and after the game, but in terms of the game itself, again, when you step over that line, it's just another game of cricket, and you have to think about it that way, otherwise you end up putting too much pressure on yourself, and there's enough of that coming from outside of the team, or from different media and bits and pieces, that you sort of have to learn to block it out and just treat it like another game.
Two more questions. What was the feeling like when you first got selected that you're going to represent your country on the world stage at a World Cup? Either of you.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll go then. Yeah, I suppose the feeling. I mean, the first World Cup game I ever played in was a World Cup semi-final at home, so yeah, it's pretty exciting. The feeling, you're pretty proud to be able to do that. The family, obviously being at home, they were able to come straight up as well. My mum, dad, my brother, and yeah, it's a pretty special feeling to be able to represent your country, and then to do it in the World Cup and have an opportunity to. I suppose you're trying to rewrite history. You're trying to create your own legacy, I suppose, as a team, and that feeling of having that opportunity is very special.
Cool, thanks. Thank you, Matt. Just one last question. Just conscious of time, obviously. How does it feel to watch all the players on TV and have idols and then play with them yourselves?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. For me personally, I remember distinctly sitting at home and watching the 2009 World Cup, and someone, Susie Bates, I think, scored 168 against Pakistan or something like that. And now being able to share a dressing room with someone of Susie's sort of stature, and I think she's probably the best female player that New Zealand's had, and it's pretty amazing to be able to just pick her brain and sit alongside her and chat a bit of cricket, and it's a really cool experience.
Yeah, I think to reiterate that as well, like from my point of view, you even like playing for Canterbury, like that debut, and all of a sudden you've got people like Peter Fulton and guys like that. And I remember I've actually got a cricket bat that had Gary Stead, Craig McMillan, Nathan Astle, Fleming, all those guys signing it. So to be able to, a lot of those guys have been coaches as well, and it's pretty, it's pretty crazy sitting next to them when you're kind of there, and guys like your Shane Bond was pretending to be him in the backyard, and then you've all of a sudden he's your bowling coach, and it's pretty cool to be able to rub shoulders with guys that you grew up, I suppose, idolising and wanting to be where they are, and then all of a sudden you've before you know it, you're in that position, and it's pretty cool.
Awesome, thank you.
And thank you as well, Aaron, for being question master today. And thank you to you all who sent your questions in as well. Really appreciate that. And I'm sure Matt and Leah both appreciated your questions a little bit more than mine at times as well. And of course, with that, I have to say a massive thank you to both of you, Leah and Matt, for giving up your time tonight to chat us through. It really feels like we've chatted through all things that World Cup experience. So really do appreciate it from you guys. And from me, that is week 3 done and dusted. World Cup experience ticked off, and that means we've only got one left. So I hope tonight has given you that insight into what it's like playing for your country, playing on the world stage, and then playing at those pinnacle events as well. Hopefully we can do another one of these in a few years' time, and we'll be sitting here talking about how New Zealand has won a couple of World Cups and they're sitting in the cabinet. But for now, thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Again, a big thanks to our guests, to Canterbury Cricket and Aaron for his work, and to Ara for their technical assistance as well. So big thank you to everyone. Next week, we are back, same time, same place, and we will be talking to these two gentlemen here, Gary Stead and Brendan Donkers. It is going to be an absolute cracker to finish things off with. These are two of my favourites, and I will definitely enjoy asking some tough questions of them rather than it usually being the other way around. So hope to see you back here next week, same time, same place. Have a good week until then, and thank you very much. That is episode 3 of Canterbury Cricket's Team Talk, done and dusted.